Hello, I'm Gary Moody, professor of bassoon at Colorado State University. In this video, I'd like to deal with some ways to help you prepare for this year's Colorado All-State Ensembles. On this video, I would like to deal with the Rubank Advanced Method Book 1, page 70, number 4. This is a Corelli sarabande, originally the third movement of Sonata 8 from a set of 12 violin sonatas, opus 5, printed in 1700. It has been copied for a number of different instruments, cello, bassoon, etc. It was common practice at that time to just borrow lots of material. So in this video, I'd like to deal with some phrasing, which is going to help us decide how we're going to breathe, and also the way to deal with the trills in a stylistically appropriate way. Now, we deal with phrasing all the time when we speak. We have multisyllabic words where we need to stress one syllable over another. As I heard the other day, someone said, you put the emphasis on the wrong syllable. So we want to make sure we get the right syllables accented. And additionally, certain words within a sentence get more accent than another, depending on what we want to say. I could say, pick up the big red ball, which sort of tells you that we're in a room with a lot of red balls, but one of them is big. Or I could say, pick up the big red ball, which tells you there are lots of big balls, but I want the one that's red. So how we stress things really adds meaning to the music. And some of those stresses are printed in the music in subtle ways. For instance, when we have a note that appears right after a bar line, that helps indicate a stress. Now, whenever a note is repeated, it does not have any melodic interest, and therefore we really need a variation of the stress. Sometimes we get this in English. If I say, he had had enough, I'm repeating the word had, and that sends a little different message. He had had enough lunch, but now he found himself hungry again, with, if I stress, he had had enough lunch, now he's full. So when we repeat notes, it's especially important to give some stress to one of them so it doesn't sound like we're stuttering. We have some repeated notes in the third bar, a series of repeated B flats. Now, singers have some clues on what notes are going to be emphasized because they're singing words with it, and they know what syllables are going to get the stress. And we have a little more of either a wild card that we can set it anywhere we want, or a mystery to figure out what that is. So I find it helpful to put in some words, and I've added that in this copy in bars 3 and 4. I have celery, with the first syllable getting an accent, and then banana, with, once again, the first syllable of that next bar emphasized. In bars 5 and 6, we get the same thing with a series of G's that we want to change the stressing of. Now, the phrase structure is most commonly 4-bar sections, and this lays out pretty much that way, which gives us good, clear places to breathe every 4 bars. You can see the breath marks in this copy. There's an additional form that this piece features in that we have, after the repeat sign, something known as a sentence structure. Now, it's common that we breathe at the ends of sentences. We generally don't breathe in the mid of a word. So therefore, I'm going to breathe and make sure the breathing corresponds to our musical sentences. Now, most frequently, music lies down in 4-bar phrases. The Germans even have a nice word for this. It's Viergebigkeit, which essentially translates to, we like things in 4 bars. And the first 8 bars are just 2 4-bar phrases ending with long notes, and we can take a breath, as shown in this copy. Starting in bar 9, we have another special structure known as a sentence structure. That has a 4-bar section known as a presentation, and another 4-bar section known as the continuation. The presentation has a half of it, 2 of the 4 bars, and then repeats an idea in some way, maybe a step up like this with a little bit of ornamentation. So we have a basic idea repeated to finish the presentation, and then we go on to the continuation. We have a couple of these sentence structures within the second half of this piece. So we want to use our understanding of this phrasing to plan where we're going to breathe. I can set aside this idea from the repeat of the basic idea by slipping in at least a little space, if not a breath. And then I want to also separate with the breath the presentation from the continuation. Now this is a slow piece, and so I want any fast notes to be in character and also feel relaxed and comfortable and not too fast. So therefore, I'm going to plan my trills so they're not very fast, and the turns we have later on, the written out turns, will also feel relaxed. In Corelli's time, they would start the trills generally from the upper note with something called an appoggiatura, the upper note being a little stressed and leaned on. The exception to this is when the upper note happens to be a step above the trilled note. You could do it either way. I like to start them all from above. I like the extra little stress it creates. Now for my short trills, I like to be very careful on how I plan them out, and that helps me play them more clearly. I've put on this copy some various ways we could write out these trills along with the original notation. At this time, also, trills had a termination, which is written out in bar 7 with a full-size note, and after that appears as a grace note. We really can't count on what rhythm the grace notes are laid out as. Composers and editors are often working in shorthand, and sometimes we'll put a small grace note, sometimes they'll put a grace note with a slash, sometimes a 16th or an 8th. You really can't count on any rhythmic information on how it appears. So, however, I want to play them consistently with one another, and I'm going to use that bar 7 as a big clue. I'll try to apply that same to the other. Now to set up the termination, we want to land the trill, stop trilling right on the third beat. Just like gymnasts when they're doing a tumble run, make sure they land before they jump off and do their next thing. If they don't, they fall down. So I want to be very careful and land the trill before I go on. So I'm going to choose one of these rhythmic patterns that's here to play, that's printed out on the page. I don't want to have a trill that's any faster than the 30-second notes that already appear in print. For instance, I'm going to play the trill in bar 7 this way. Now, the 30-second notes in bar 11 are actually just a written out turn, and in fact, in a number of the other editions of this piece, there are no 30-second notes in those bars, and in fact, in some editions, there's no turn either. But the turn is merely a neighbor group around a D. So we're on the D, and we visit our upper and lower neighbors, and therefore I want to make sure we stress the structural D there and maintain the smoothness of the line. A few more thoughts. In bar 14, there's a high A, which is a very, very flexible note, maybe my favorite note on the bassoon because it really demands that we use our ears carefully. So I'm going to listen to the G sharp and try to make sure I make the A just a half step above that. I want to make sure I support that with my air and not my lips to help maintain its pitch stability. In bar 22, we leap from an A up to an F. That's the widest leap in the piece and therefore the most emotional. Now, if I were going to leap from the floor up to a piano bench, before I did that, I would bend down with my knees to prepare to make that wide leap. And so I want to stress that A before I leap up to the F. I hope this video will be helpful in your preparations for your audition. If you have any questions or would like copies of these examples, please feel free to send me an email and I'll get one right out to you. Good luck with your audition.